Gazart.
The fuck was that?
It was a gazart, Kane.
It was a Gazart.
And sometimes people need a gazart. Is that okay with you?
No.
Give me a minute before you actually start the episode. There's like an airplane flying overhead.
Fuck that airplane.
I can't fucking hear that airplane.
My microphone can hear
I don't hear that fucking airplane at all. I think you're fucking lying. What's that like? Is that an airplane piloted by Popeye? Is that what that was?
What just happened?
No, that would be...
No, that's Scatman John.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Welcome to Butcher Block Horror Podcast, where we exhume horror movies from the past and cut into what makes them so delectable. I'm Kane.
I'm going to be Baron Samedi today.
I'm the Scat Man.
Oh, I thought you were just like made of poop.
No, man, Scatman John. Come on now.
Oh, okay. Well, today we're throwing the Wes Craven directed The Serpent and the Rainbow onto the slab and carving up our favorite portions to force feed to you, our unwitting victims. If you enjoy the taste
Like a
of these...
rainbow in the dark. Boom. No?
Yes.
If you enjoy the taste of these feasts of fright, then make sure you follow us on your favorite podcasting site. If you YouTube, make sure to crush that like button, then smash the subscribe button before gently caressing the bell button to receive notifications anytime we unleash something upon this world.
Smush your genitals into the bell.
Whoa, too far.
Too far?
Buddy, too far. All right?
Joe knows when something's gone too far. It's not too far. It's not.
It's definitely too far.
This is what people came here for, so let them rejoice.
They want raw, uncut horror content.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a website. We give you brainworms.com. It's on the internet, and we'll let you into our funky fresh Discord
The
server.
interwebs.
Or you could just click on the Patreon links to directly support the show.
Yeah.
The fuck was that?
That was my gravity bong. No, I'm just kidding. That was me sipping my tea.
Is it good tea? What kind of tea you drinking there, JD?
It's a mix. It's a little bit of green tea with some matcha powder, a little ginger powder, a little, what else is in there? A little clove. I kind of make like myself a little concoction. There's a tiny little bit of date sugar.
Is there any PCP in it?
Well, despite my behavior, I assure you there's no PCP.
Any psilocybin mushrooms?
Yeah. What kind of tea are we doing here? Huh?
Again, despite my behavior, there are no drugs of that nature in my beverage.
JD is tripping nuts every time we record this podcast. Don't let him tell you different.
And every moment of every day.
Sure.
I'm on zombie powder, baby.
Did you do a line of zombie powder off a monkey's paw?
You're awfully chatty for somebody that's on zombie powder.
You know, I'm on the tail end of it. I'm on the other side of the hill of the zombie powder. It's wearing off, but I'm moving again.
Right. That's good. Did somebody bury you, or did they just leave you in your apartment?
I kind of buried myself, if you catch my drift.
I don't catch your drift, actually. What are you trying to say?
Yeah, I don't understand at all.
The Serpent and the Rainbow. Wes Craven's Serpent and the Rainbow.
Oh, that's right. We're supposed to talk about that movie.
We can just hang out. I mean, that's cool with me.
I mean, we've been hanging out. Now
banter.
we're going to hang in and talk about this movie. This film was released February 5th, 1988, with a runtime of 98 minutes, a budget of $7 million, and a box office return of $19.6 million. Originally, this movie was 3 hours and 4 minutes long, but director Wes Craven cut it down to the 98-minute mark.
Thankfully.
And I'm grateful for that.
I don't think I could have watched this.
It probably went very differently than what we... it was very talky movie.
It was probably boring as shit.
He probably, after he finished cutting the first draft, he probably sat down and watched it and was like, I can't fucking show this to people. Oh my God, I fell asleep twice and I made it.
So yeah, after his executive decision, it was cut down to 98 minutes. So we've talked about Wes Craven. He's a favorite here on the Butcher Block.
Who was that? What did he do?
Wes Craven. He's a legendary screenwriter, producer,
He had a new nightmare.
editor, actor, but mostly a director.
He does like catching his bad guys on fire.
Oh yeah, there's lots of bad guys in his films that go up in smoke. He was born August 2nd of 1939, and he left us August 30th of 2015. I would call Craven a pioneer in many ways, particularly in the slasher department. We know him for his satire and cliche humor at times. You see a lot of that in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Mm-hmm.
And the Scream movie.
Oh yeah, there's that too. I almost forgot. Many accolades for Craven. Wes Craven has been the recipient of a Scream Award, a Sitges Film Festival Award, a Fangoria Chainsaw Award, and nominations for a Saturn Award. He was also honored by the Academy of Science Fiction for fantasy and horror films, and he was presented with the illustrious Life Career Award.
Sure, that means a lot. The life career.
Yeah, it seems to be quite a big thing. So
I've accomplished very little, so good for Wes Craven.
So yeah, like I said, for those of you who have surfaced recently from an underground bunker, Wes Craven is responsible for Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream and Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Swamp Thing, Shocker, People Under the Stairs, a bunch of awesome stuff like that.
Wes Craven did Swamp Thing? I don't think I knew that.
Oh yeah, that's a Wes Craven flick, the
Nice.
original. Yeah. Producers of The Serpent and the Rainbow are Doug Claiborne and David Ladd. Neither of these guys really did jack shit for horror movies. This is pretty much one of their only horror credits. There was an executive producer involved, however, named Rob Cohen, and they were involved with Monster Squad, The Witches of Eastwick, and, well, it's more sci-fi than horror, but The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Into the chopper!
On to the plot of The Serpent and the Rainbow. 'Tis the year 1978, when a person named Christophe mysteriously dies in a French missionary.
He's played by Conrad Roberts.
Yeah, he was pretty fantastic in this movie. He was an amazing trauma victim.
The acting was very consistent in this movie.
It was.
Yeah, definitely. Meanwhile, a voodoo parade comes swinging through town, and there's this character sort of leading the charge, much in the likeness of Baron Samedi. That's the character you see with like the top hat and the skull paint on, and there.
Yeah, that was Gaston, and he was played by Baja Dola.
Okay.
And if I butchered that name, it was JD.
Yeah, because I tend to be responsible for everything that comes out of everyone's mouth here.
Only if it's wrong or bad, then it's your fault.
Sure. And that seems to follow me beyond the podcast in my everyday living.
You're like the John Arbuckle of people.
Yeah, something like that. The next morning, Christophe is buried along with a traditional Catholic procession. So what I failed to mention was we see this ominous man who we'll come and get to know eventually. He's kind of our antagonist, our main antagonist of the film. But so we see him again as the coffin is lowered into the cold, hard ground. Christophe's tear-filled eyes open.
All right, I'm going to try to say the captain's name real quick.
Okay.
Who's like the bad guy of the whole movie. Captain Dargent Petraud?
Yeah, Petraud.
Yeah, that's the character's name. And he was played by Zakes Mokay.
Yep.
McKay.
I apologize to everyone for how we're pronouncing these words and names.
Yeah, I'm real dumb. And I would like to say that I'm resetting my sleep schedule. So I have slept maybe a half hour today.
Right.
Oh my
Not
gosh.
even just speakers of these languages, just anyone who can hear the way that we're saying words. Just, I'm sorry.
Yeah, everybody should just take their pants off. So fast
Whoa.
That's
forward
gonna fix anything.
7 years, where we join Harvard anthropologist Dennis Allen.
Played by Bill Pullman.
Yeah.
Billy Pullman. He's off studying rare herbs and medicine in the Amazon rainforest alongside a local shaman. Dennis takes a good swig of some concocted potion and begins tripping balls. He has visions of
The spirit animal.
that too.
Do you think the movie would have been better if the twist at the end was that the whole movie was him still in the Amazon hallucinating?
Fuck
That
yes.
would be pretty sweet. And it would explain for the frantic half-hour ending.
Oh, sure.
It was all just a fever dream.
Yeah, like a weird Jacob's Ladder kind of twist that none of it ever happened. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've said this during the watch party, and I'm going to say it again. Why are everyone's spirit animals like wolves or leopards or lions?
Because white people don't understand the concept of a spirit animal, Kane.
I don't understand. Why could it be something fun? Like, what about a goldfish?
Well, I think they understand it, but it's just this romanticized or an idealized notion of what they might be.
Sure.
Why wouldn't your spirit animal be a goldfish?
Like a sloth.
Yeah.
Or just like a bowl of grub worms.
Yeah, or just like an earthworm, solo earthworm. That's your spirit animal, is you are an earthworm.
Manatee.
Dung beetle, flesh-eating bacteria.
Yeah, some protozoa.
I feel a lot of connection with the manatee.
But no, it's all wolves and eagles and
Right.
and fucking snakes and stuff. Everybody's got those animals. Why giraffe is a cool animal, right? Why couldn't you have giraffe as your spirit animal?
Yeah, and it gets top shelf foliage.
Yeah.
Right. End rant. I'm sorry.
It
just bothers. Every time someone has a spirit animal in a movie, I'm like, why the fuck are you a wolf?
So Dennis is tripping balls hardcore in the forest, and he has a vision of a big giant leopard, and then also he sees the very same man from Christoph's funeral, while surrounded by corpses in a seemingly bottomless pit. And so then, we're back in Boston now, and Alan is approached by a pharmaceutical company in pursuit of the drug used by Haitian voodoo practitioners to create zombies. Well, that's not really what they want it for. They think they're going to use it to create some sort of like a super anesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So they fund Dennis, and they send him back.
I would like to state that the actors that played the pharmaceutical stooges were Paul Guilfoyle, who played Andrew Cassidy, and then Michael, is it Go or Gough? Gough?
Gough.
Gough?
Yeah.
Gog?
Gough? Michael Gough, is that the 89 Alfred? That was his name?
That's how I'd pronounce it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. How the hell did I miss that? All right, well, he played Schoonbacher.
Oh, the Schoonbacher.
Yeah.
Hooked on Phonics may or may not have worked for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it worked for any of us. So anyway.
Yes, his name is Dr. Earl Schoonbacher.
Nice.
I've liked that actor in everything I've seen him in.
I've only remember seeing him in the 89 Batman and now this movie.
I feel like I've seen him in other things and found him charming, but now that you've said that, I can't think of what those things might have been.
All right, great. Now I got to look it up. That's great. That's great. Just friggin' great. I mean, he did a lot of movies, like a lot of movies. Like his film career started in 1948 with Anna Karenina,
Mm-hmm.
but he actually did what looks to be a decent amount of horror. I mean, he did a bunch of like war shit too, but he did The House in the Woods. He did The Horror of Dracula. That's a Hammer horror film.
I think that might be what else I know him from is Hammer stuff.
Yeah, Horrors of the Black Museum.
So Dennis shows back up to Haiti, rather horribly timed, smack dab in the middle of a revolution. And then we meet Dr. Marcel Duchamp.
Dr. Marielle Ducamp was played by Kathy Tyson.
Awesome. And so the two of them, they track down Christoph, the man buried 7 years earlier. And Alan ends up getting shaken down and taken into custody of the, I'm going to probably pronounce this incorrectly, but the Tonton Mancoute. And so then we meet the mysterious man at the missionary and then at the funeral. And I believe you pronounce it D'Argent Petrog? Okay. He means fucking business, while he sternly warns Dennis to leave Haiti. And so what does Dennis do? He continues his investigation and tracks down
I
a
thought
man.
you were going to say he leaves Haiti. I thought you were just
No.
going to rewrite the film for us right here. It's like, oh,
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
that's strange that you just leave Haiti.
If I can interrupt with some actual content,
Yeah.
D'Argent Petro was based on real-life Haitian dictator Francois Papadoc Duvalier.
Oh, very cool.
And the revolution that was happening in this movie actually did happen, but it failed. And also it was backed by the CIA because of course it was.
Of course it was.
Because this movie was loosely based on actual historical events.
So yeah, Dennis tracks down a man named Mozart who is thought to have knowledge about the ingredients for this sought-after zombie powder.
Yeah, it was Brent Jennings.
Dennis is trying to whip up a deal with Mozart, but Mozart's not really having it. He's kind of playing the fool. And so Dennis pays him for a sample, but is given some rat poison instead, and the poor recipient was a little baby goat. And then Dennis publicly embarrasses Mozart by taking a swig of a fake solution that he swapped out through sleight of hand. Embarrassing a voodoo practitioner is probably not the brightest idea to attempt publicly, but anyway, he does it, and Dennis is, he's persistent though. He's really trying to get this drug, so he's about to do anything it'll take. Mozart then agrees to teach him how to concoct the drug after, some crazy shit that goes down, but he wants $1,000. Dennis ends up recaptured by the Tonton Marcotte, and then they torture him a good bit. They drive a nail right through his fun bag.
What's a fun bag?
Well, that's something that you might have learned in health class.
Oh, the fun bag?
Yeah.
Joe, do you know what a fun bag is?
I'm assuming that JD is referring to the testicles parcel.
Yeah, the scrotum, the scrotal sac.
Testicle parcel.
Containing your testicles.
The scrot tote?
The scrot tote, that's correct.
The ball bag.
The ball bag, okay.
So Dennis he's abandoned somewhere in the streets of Haiti after his torturous fun.
Torturous fun. That's what this
But this
podcast
time,
is called now.
with a little letter that basically reads, "Leave Haiti or be killed."
They gave him a lot of chances.
Yeah, he's very stupid and equally determined to get his hands on this drug. So he meets with Mozart to learn basically how to do it. And so Mozart just schools Dennis's ass, and he even compares him to a very skilled scientist through the knowledge that he demonstrates to concoct the potion. So Dennis is now, he's riddled with nightmares of Petrod, who is revealed to be a Bokor. It's basically a voodoo witch.
Right.
And this voodoo witch has an ability to transform his enemies into zombies through the powder. Another great reason to leave Haiti, I would say. He turns people into zombies and claims to steal their souls.
Who will steal your soul?
When Dennis wakes up, he finds himself alongside Christoph's decapitated sister. And just then, the Tonton Marcotte bursts through the door and the windows, just turning the whole place upside down. They're taking pictures. They're calling this a crime scene, and they're basically framing Dennis for her murder.
Mm-hmm.
So then, Petrod has really given Dennis many breaks and many warnings.
You sound really sympathetic to the bad guy in this movie, JD.
Well, I would just think that Dennis would choose a different path.
He does get a lot of chances.
For being the creepy dickbag that he is,
Yeah.
the guy has given him several chances.
Yeah, for being a dark voodoo priest and also a dictator, he
Right.
just gives this guy a lot of opportunities to fuck up.
Well, I don't think he was the dictator. I think that Jean-Claude Duvalier was the dictator. I think he was just like benefiting
That makes sense.
from a
Okay,
corrupt
yeah.
power.
Sure.
And for what did Dennis Allen what was he really in pursuit of? To try to deepen the pockets of some pharmaceutical company? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For a drug that could be used for just absolutely horrible things.
Which I would like to state, right, that an anesthetic that just paralyzes your body,
Mhm.
but you still can see, hear, smell,
feel.
and feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not
not
a
great.
good anesthetic. That's not a replacement.
That's a terrible anesthetic. That's
Yeah,
like the
no.
thing you should be going in the opposite direction of. Like, you should be
Exactly.
going there to eradicate it.
Mhm.
Not make it to where you feel all of the pain. You just can't
Right.
do anything about it.
He should be going to Haiti and being like, "Oh, do you know how to make this powder?" And then shoot them on the spot. But instead, like I said, he's trying to bank.
I would like to state that Celestine Durand was played by Aletta Mitchell. That was Christoph's sister.
The pharmaceutical company was a front for the CIA, who wanted the zombie powder for torture.
That's probably the most likely case.
Or for war. Maybe they wanted it for soldiers.
And that could be another reason. So, Petrod forces Alan on a plane, this time back to the U.S. And somehow, Mozart sneaks aboard and hands Dennis the zombie-making formula, this little jar of a yellowish powder. Personally, I thought it was mustard seed extract or some turmeric.
It did kind of look like turmeric, yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Smoked paprika, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Mozart really at this point, Dennis didn't have his money, but at the end of the day, Mozart just wanted some fame. He wanted people around the world to know his scientific prowess and just wanted to be a popular guy. Dennis agrees to spread the word about him and returns to Boston. Mission complete, right?
Yeah.
There's a celebration dinner where Dennis's boss becomes possessed. That's the woman in the red dress who grabs the knife and slides across the table and gives him a good slash.
That's Deborah Cassidy, and she's played by Day Young.
They unfortunately did not reenact the daylight coming scene from the movie Beetlejuice.
Yeah, that would have been a lot more fun.
I was a little let down. I was expecting daylight come and me want go home.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe some shrimp coming up. I mean, there was a creepy hand in the soup, so I mean, that counts for something, right?
Which, we'll have a nice talk about the prosthetics in this film. There weren't many of them, but the ones that existed were very solid.
The one?
There were a few. There was a good handful. Anyway.
I'll give you a good handful.
He warns Dennis through the use of this possessed woman, kind of tells him some horrible stuff. And so what does Dennis do? He returns to Haiti again.
Like an
And at this
asshole.
point, I'd say he probably deserves to die. Dennis seeks out his ally, who is also what's known in voodoo, a Haitian voodoo, to be a Honigan. A Honigan.
Hungan.
Houngan?
Hongan. I guess. I don't know how you pronounce it. You guys took care of it.
Let's all take a whack at it. One of us will get it right.
Yep.
Anyway, a priest in Haitian voodoo. A spiritually powerful person.
I should apologize because I didn't say this before, but Lucien was played by Paul Winfield.
And so, yeah, Lucien Celine, he's an ally of Dennis, and Celine he's unfortunately killed, and so is Mozart. They are both sacrificed in a ritual to bring Petrod more magic powers, I guess. Dennis Allen is spattered in the face with some zombie dust, and then he dies. And I would say that shot was pretty cool, him staggering around. I'm not sure what kind of lens they used, but...
I mean, a lot of the dreamlike sequences were pretty decent.
Yeah, there were some cool moments of cinematography in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Who was the cinematographer, Joe?
John Lindley was the cinematographer.
Nice.
I'll go into him in more detail later.
So yeah, Dennis ends up catching the big ticket, and Petrod stashes his body, presumably to teach his ass a further lesson.
I think the lessons were done. I think he was just going to use him for zombie labor.
Yeah, he's up to bad stuff. His intentions were ill. So he steals him from the hospital before his death gets reported to the U.S. Embassy, and takes him to a graveyard and stashes him helplessly in a coffin alongside a tarantula to keep him a little company.
Best character in the movie.
Right. Dennis wakes up hours later inside his tomb, absolutely fucking horrified. He had been aware of what was happening the entire time, but couldn't do a thing about it. Fortunately, Christoph, his former fellow zombie, through shared experience, he was compassionate enough to dig him up and pull him out of the coffin, and he rescues Dennis. So,
And then they kiss.
They don't.
and they could have.
They didn't.
They did in my imagination.
Nice.
But then so does everyone and everything. So,
It's true, yeah.
because you're all about love,
Yeah.
and we love you for it.
Because love is real.
It's very real. So Dennis returns to the Tonton Marcotte headquarters in search of Marielle. And it is there where Dennis and Petrod do battle.
And the movie gets dumb.
Yeah,
Very
the movie
weird.
goes off the fucking rails.
It's off the rails, but in an exciting way, and it makes up for a lot of the slowness that...
Because despite our bullshit, JD has summarized the movie very efficiently, moving from plot point to plot point. The movie itself was in no hurry.
No, it took its sweet-ass time.
especially the first hour.
Sure.
I would say the first hour of this film felt like 2 hours, and then we get to this
Right.
point here, and then it's like kicked into overdrive.
goes off.
They hit the turbo button, and it's just balls to the wall, slicks, and there's no looking back.
It's true.
It gets very fucking wild. So anyway, they're doing battle, a bit of magic.
Which, why did Dr. fucking Dennis Allen, why did he get voodoo powers?
Well, If you remember, Celine gave him some protection and maybe a transfer of his own white magic, because Petrode was using an evil form of voodoo magic, and Celine's was more of like a lesser evil. It was more protective, and I'm assuming he granted him certain abilities to just return the evil of Petrode's dark magic. So
I don't know. It felt to me like the scene from Conan the Destroyer when Conan's fighting the wizard's polymorph self, and he finds out the only way to defeat the wizard is to break the glass, like the mirrors. That's how I felt. Oh no, I gotta break these bottles with souls in them, and then the face gets cut.
My suspicion is, potentially there was more learning of voodoo in the 2.5 whatever the fuck hours that were cut that we're never going to see. All of those plot points were set up and then just left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, that's super fair, and I bet you're spot on with that assessment.
And then just the writers wanted a cool, exciting climax.
Or the studio did.
Oh, sure.
For now, though, let's assume that Dennis is using Celine's magic and his protective spell, the little blood ritual that the two shared, and that's kind of what's allowing Dennis to drive a gigantic nail through Petrode's nutsack.
It's true.
How you like him now? He gets a chair to do some of his dirty work. The straps in the chair sort of whip around Petrode, and this is all after, Petrode had been set on fire, and
you think he's dead and he's not.
Yeah,
which is a very Wes Craven thing to do.
Very hardcore shit, yeah. But he gets a nail through the nuts and then gets sucked into the ground.
To be embraced by the Cenobites.
Presumably the end of the evil bastard. And in doing so, Dennis sort of rescues all of Haiti in a sense, because that guy was...
Of course he does.
Bad shit to a lot of people.
Although they left some of those jars intact.
Probably should have released those souls while they had the chance. Yeah. Let's just assume they go back and do it later. So yeah, people are out in the street celebrating, and Marielle proclaims that the nightmare is over.
That was the end of the movie.
Yep. We're all very confused.
Yep. Joe, writer, cinematographer, go.
What? Oh, right. This movie was inspired by the book. This is a long title. The Serpent and the Rainbow, a Harvard scientist's astonishing journey into the secret societies of Haitian voodoo, zombies, and magic, written by anthropologist and researcher Wade Davis.
Glad that happened.
Yeah, that's a lot of words. Full disclosure, apparently Wade Davis, who is now like a well-respected anthropological writer, he's written for well-respected periodicals, but The Serpent and the Rainbow was criticized by the scientific community because some of the way that he described these voodoo processes and the chemistry of it apparently wasn't sound, but he's defended himself and there's been back and forth. As far as I can tell, there was just no conclusion. Science was like, hey, that doesn't make a ton of sense what you wrote. And he was like, yeah, huh? And then everybody moved on and he became a well-respected writer.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. His work also inspired 3 episodes of The X-Files. The screenplay was written by Richard Maxwell, who was primarily a television producer and writer who wrote no horror, but he did write a series called 18 Wheels of Justice in the mid to late 90s, which was about a Defense Department agent who went undercover as a trucker.
The fuck?
And that sounds very stupid.
That sounds real fucking dumb.
Sounds real dumb. And then the other co-writer was Adam Rodman, who was also a television writer. He wrote no horror and also nothing that sounded as interesting as 18 Wheels of Justice, so who cares?
I mean, I feel like you could kind of tell that the story adaptation, the screenplay, was written by someone that didn't do horror.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if we were to be flies on the wall when Wes Craven was finishing reading the script and he's like, okay, where's the horror? And they're like, what do you mean?
What are you talking
scary
about?
Stuff. And he's like, fine, I'll take care of it. So the end of the movie is just Wes Craven's edition.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Wes Craven didn't get some kind of storytelling credit, because you kind of do feel his fingers on the story every now and then. But I don't know.
Yeah, did you have more stuff that you wanted to say about John Lindley?
Yeah, I can say some stuff about John Lindley. He started in the mid 80s, still getting work as of today, like as of the 2020s. He did a bunch of stuff, not a ton of which was horror, but he did work on the, if you remember the Castle Rock anthology on Hulu,
Yeah.
he did cinematography for that.
Okay.
And in the late 80s, he worked on the films Stepfather and Killer Party,
Nice.
neither of which I've seen, but they look like pretty good 80s horror cheese.
Stepfather's fun.
Okay. That's all. That's all I have to say about writers and cinematographers.
All right. The score was done by Brad Fidel. It was good. It did the job.
Yeah, the score was good.
I enjoyed it. It wasn't a Richard Band type of thing, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah, it had real instruments. It wasn't just some weirdo with a Casio keyboard.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead and move right on into special effects, JD.
All right, special effects. Quite a list to comb through. Tried to narrow down.
Yeah, I saw that the special effects credits were pretty extensive.
Very extensive, yeah. And I spent some time kind of combing through, narrowing it down to, just a few people that had some good experience in horror. So we had Bob Amundsen, and he had quite a decent list of special effects, but nothing really in horror. Then Peter Chesney, who was involved with Pet Sematary, House 2, Vamp, Pet Sematary 2.
House 2 comes up a lot on this show.
Sure does. People Under the Stairs, Vampire in Brooklyn, and Tremors 2. And then there is Emmett Kane, who is also involved in House 2, Graveyard Shift, and one of the Godzilla remakes. So after that, there's just this long list of visual effects people and special effects. There really wasn't anyone specifically credited with the creation of the prosthetic or like the zombie bride that we saw. That was probably the strongest prosthetic effect element of the film.
Mm-hmm.
The blood was just so, but I think it was on the more realistic side at times. We've definitely in past films have seen blood of every shade of the rainbow. But I feel like this blood sort of had it right and especially that it was sort of like kind of dark and clotted looking and had a bit of texture to it. Yeah, sometimes.
When Bill Pullman was in the coffin and looked like raspberry jello that was just starting to set.
Yeah, but it was pretty dark too. It was like a dark red.
Mm-hmm. It definitely looks sugary.
Yeah.
It did look sugary.
So yeah, there was the hand kind of protruding from the bowl of soup and a couple of injuries. There were some decent slashes from blades throughout the film, and those were a bit gaseous. And
Paul Winfield throws his head.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool scene too. It looked like, some type of smoke grenade, but as the head came off, it definitely had a pretty cool look. There was a like a scorpion that came out of a corpse's mouth at one point. That looked pretty cool. But that zombie bride really, I felt, was one of the stronger effects in the film. And if you really, during the watch party, we sort of had to pause and take a few looks, and I thought that it was a pretty strong prop, pretty solid makeup, pretty ghoulish overall. It didn't have a whole lot of movement, but I think the sound coordinated with it was pretty cool. And we heard it too later on in the film when Dennis was taken to the Tauntaun prison, and all of those corpse arms came lurking out into the corridors, and like they were very like long, stretchy arms and rotten zombie flesh over the bones. So I thought that was another string of solid effects.
Is that all we got with the special effects?
Yeah, for the most part.
All right. We'll go ahead and move to personal experience with the film. Joe, start us off.
Yeah. I was given this movie on VHS in probably 2004, and watched it, liked it, completely forgot about it, and it went wherever the fuck the VHS tapes I owned in the early 2000s went, and then rewatched it for this with no memory of it.
Hey, I ran into that too. I remember bits and pieces of it. Like I knew some of the stuff, but for the most part, it was like a blank slate. I was like, what is this?
I didn't remember it being as slow paced as it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was surprised by that. And I think just expecting it, knowing that it's a Wes Craven movie, I think kind of sets expectations for it that the movie itself is not going to fulfill, because it's a slow burn. It's only intermittently horrific. I think it's a good movie. I think it's an interesting story. but it's not what you expect a Wes Craven horror film to kind of be.
Right.
I was pleasantly surprised by how respectfully, aside from Bill Pullman being the kind of character that saves the day at the end, by how respectfully it treated the minority characters. Bill Pullman fucks up a lot and gets saved by the other characters around him. And really no one character in this movie is developed. They're all pretty limited in terms of depth, but it's pretty equally distributed. Because, you know, we even talked about, like, how racist is this movie going to feel in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, the most racist part of the movie was just they went to Boston.
Yeah. And yeah, I felt like, especially for a movie of its time, it was pretty well handled.
Yeah. I feel like it didn't treat voodoo like a gimmick or like a joke. Like, I felt like it actually treated it like a serious religion.
Right.
Which is nice. All right, and then before we move on to JD, Joe, zombie rating, 1 to 5.
Probably like a 2, maybe a 3 if we, round up. What we saw of zombies in this movie were well done, and I feel like you and JD are going to get into a more in-depth kind of debate about that, but there weren't a ton of them, so probably like between a 2 and a 3.
Will you just pick a number?
Call it a 2.
Okay, 2. All right. JD. Personal experience with the film.
So, my personal experience with The Serpent and the Rainbow goes quite a ways back. I think as a kid, I've always had a fascination with the religion voodoo. And, I don't know, something about...
Voodoo.
I imagine your obsession with New Orleans probably aids in that fascination these days.
Yeah, I've been to... some voodoo museums, and I had some really cool experiences in New Orleans some of the first times I was there, where I actually felt like I learned a lot and just went on some tours. I know all that sounds very whatever, kind of cliche and silly, but it was so fun. And anyway, I just remember being a kid and thinking, like, man, what an interesting religion. It's so in depth and there's so many like deities. And anyway, so the movie, it started off hitting all the right notes for me early on, and it roped me in. And when I learned that it was sort of a zombie movie, that was also interesting. So I remember renting this and, bringing it home and being pretty fascinated with it. And I think, when I was much, much younger, the fact that it started off slow was more anxiety building than anything. And I think that this film really pulls on your anxiety if you have it. It really conjures a lot of dark fears and feelings, like the whole idea of being buried alive, and the way that they take almost like dreamlike sequences or, the subconscious and blend it with consciousness. It's done in such an anxiety-promoting, fright-filled way. I would often watch this film and just not be able to focus on certain elements of it because I would get so fixated on the literal things that were happening, like having somebody command your soul or possess you, or just, having this dark entity sort of take you over. Mm-hmm. So all of those little elements, it made me basically not recognize the pace of the front part of the movie. And then anyway, so I'm watching this film now, and I've seen it, a handful of times over the years, but I think just in this moment, as we finished it up, I was really, again, still taken by, Wes Craven's direction and just his use of that dream state and the actual fear and terror that can be created in the subconscious mind that we're all sort of aware of. And, everybody has these different fears of things that, are super irrational, but also death is one of those things that'll eventually come for everyone, and it's frightening to be reminded of it in the way that they remind you of it in this film.
Right.
So, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. How about Kane? What's
well,
your
real
personal...
quick, let's go with zombie rating, 1 to 5.
This is a tough one because there was really only one real grotesquely distorted zombie in it.
There were multiple zombies. I mean, Bill Pullman at one point was a zombie.
Sure.
So we're taking all of those zombies and using that to gauge our number here.
Well, So far, all along this season, I've been giving my rating based off of the prosthetic magic behind the zombie, not so much the quality of the zombie's makeup. I would give the bride zombie in this film, I would give her a 4. I think the highest rating I'd given in any of the prior episodes this season, I think I've said 3.5. So I would say that this zombie edges those zombies out in terms of...
Edge.
I did.
Zombies are in this movie are a 4. JD, is that what you're saying? You're going with 4 for these zombies?
I'm giving the prosthetic quality of the zombies, the technical makeup and the prosthetic effects. That to me would be a 4. But I'm also basing it off of the 3 prior films in terms of the quality that there were fewer of them. So if you're taking like the way the zombies moved and the way that they dressed and other, like visual, like the overall visual aesthetic of the other zombies, if you take that all into account, so far I'm giving this zombie a 4.
Right. Yeah, because I kind of took quantity of zombies into consideration with my rating.
Yeah, and I think that's fair too, because it's still each of us are giving our individual opinions.
For sure.
And it's hard to have a standard really to judge.
Especially as we're watching different movies and our perspective changes.
Sure.
So the one prosthetic creature was a 4. The other zombies are what?
Which ones? Do you mean like when Christoph was a zombie?
That's Christoph and the lady in the beginning and Bill Pullman.
Yeah, I would say like their makeup as fresh dead was pretty solid, but I don't know. I mean, I'd give them maybe like a 1 or a 2. They didn't have skin flaps and bone exposure and anything rotten hanging off of them. It was just, they were, it's a low rating for a fresh zombie, but it would be in anyone's film,
So this was an example of a movie that I liked a whole bunch when I was a kid and thought was pretty scary. I'm imagining it's like with the zombie arms coming out of the wall and the undead guy jumping through the wall and attacking Bill Pullman at the end and all that stuff. Most of the rest of the movie, it was cool. It was okay. I definitely didn't really enjoy it that much.
Right.
And part of this is probably just being who I am today versus who I was, when I saw this in the late 80s or early 90s, right? The white guy coming to save Haiti is just gross.
It's not as strong as other 80s films, but it is definitely an element of the plot.
But more so, it is interesting that they actually treated voodoo with some. I mean, I don't know much about voodoo. I tend to avoid all religion.
Sure.
So my knowledge of voodoo is pretty much restricted to Child's Play and The Serpent and the Rainbow and some other movies like that.
Right.
So I can't say that I'm an authority, but it did seem like this movie took it seriously.
Sure.
Whereas I feel like Child's Play just used it as a gimmick. How do we get Charles Lee Ray into a doll? Voodoo. Exactly.
It's got
voodoo.
dolls in it. It's similar. It's fine.
How does some grouchy Chicago white guy learn voodoo? There's a voodoo priest that lives in his neighborhood. Fucking sold. Let's go. Moving on.
Yeah. And I feel like if I can expand a little bit, I feel like we had a similar experience with this to the experience we had with Puppet Master.
Yes.
Where you remember all the really cool shit.
Exactly.
And your brain, over the decades kind of edits out all the parts where the movie was not all that interesting.
Because honestly, Bill Pullman's character, I'm sorry, you're not going to fucking get your balls cut off in Haiti to get some anesthesia powder.
Sure.
You're fucking not. We already have anesthetics, right? Those already exist. You're not going to go there just to try to get a buck.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in the beginning, you're going to go there to try to earn a buck. But once you realize that they're going to jam nails into your ball sack, you fucking leave and you don't come back.
Well, even like once he realized the nature of the zombification process, I feel like he should have just, gotten his notes in order and opted out because it wasn't what he was sent there for.
Exactly. So overall, like I said, the last 8 minutes of the movie were fun.
Very stupid.
It was very stupid, but it was my kind of stupid.
Sure.
It was real dumb, but it was real fun dumb, right? And when Paul Winfield throws his head, I was just like, that's amazing. He just ripped his own head off and threw it at Bill Pullman. I'm here for that. But for the most part, I really think this movie doesn't deserve the praise that it gets. It's really not that great of a movie. And that's not even just as a horror movie. Just as a movie in general, I won't go out of my way to watch this movie again. As far as zombie ratings go, it's a 1. Voodoo zombies don't scare me. I mean, there was the fun corpse lady in a dress. Like, that was fun. But the zombies in the movie, they just weren't scary. Even the thought of it wasn't really all that scary. But I don't discredit people for thinking they were scary, because some people, the idea of being locked in a box is a real palpable thing. And to come back without control over your own body is a real palpable thing that digs into people's psyche and makes them go, holy shit, that's horrifying. So I don't discredit people going, those zombies were scary because those zombies were us, you know, that kind of sense. Yeah.
Right. And apparently all of the things that I want to say, I'm thinking of after my turn to talk has ended. But like, I occasionally suffer from sleep paralysis.
Right.
And yeah, to me, like, that whole thing of being trapped in your body is legitimately horrifying.
Yeah, I've experienced that as well a few times, and it is terrifying.
So I think it's effective as a fear in that way.
All right. Does anybody have anything else to say?
No.
If you watched The Serpent and the Rainbow, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
You can find us at WeGiveYouBrainworms.com, as well as all the places podcasts live. If you do the YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe.
And click the bell.
And click the bell so that Joe gets his dopamine and JD gets his gumball. Next week, we are covering 28 Days Later.
Yep.
And hopefully my sleep schedule will return to some sort of normalcy.
Hopefully. You've been real weird this episode.
I feel real weird. Like, I still feel real weird. This is going to be a weird fucking episode.
Do you feel like you're becoming a zombie?
Now I'm feeling zombified. That
Nice.
is an accurate statement.
I understood that reference.
All right, I'm going to call it a day.
Au revoir.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, bro, smash that. Bam! Bam!